Today, we're diving into a really powerful text by Thomas Kempis called The Royal Road. And it gets right to the heart of a question every single one of us has to face. How do we find any kind of peace when life, involves suffering? It's just inevitable. So let's get into it. Right out of the gate, we're hit with this incredibly direct question. And honestly, it's the perfect place to start. It just forces you to stop and think, right now, what's the burden you're carrying? This one question really sets the stage for everything else we're going to talk about. So the author immediately frames our whole lives around this fundamental choice. The argument isn't about if you're going to carry a burden. That's a given. It's about which one you choose to carry. And that brings us to this core idea of the two crosses. And here they are, side by side. The text is basically saying you can't escape having a cross. You're either going to bear the weight of all your worldly attachments, your stuff, your status, your desires, or you're going to follow a path that finds its purpose through hardship, not in spite of it. One way or another, a burden is unavoidable. Okay, so if we have to choose, why is one of these paths so much harder for us to take? Well, this next section dives into a very, very human tendency the author calls the mercenary mindset. It's all about our deep-seated love for comfort. And this is the central observation, right? It's easy to want the reward. I mean, who doesn't want the prize at the end? But the journey, the actual struggle to get there, the text points out that very few of us are actually willing to embrace that part of the deal. This illustrates the point so well. The author paints this picture of what you might call a fair weather follower. Someone who's all in for the good times, eager to be at the feast, loves the miracles, wants all the comfort, but the moment things get tough with fasting or shame or real adversity, they're suddenly nowhere to be found. And that leads to this really sharp, challenging question. If we're only in it for the good stuff, just for what we can get out of it, are we really on a path of purpose? Or are we, as the text puts it, just acting like mercenaries, hired for a reward? So let's define that. What is mercenary love? It's a love that's based on self-interest. It's not about loving the source of goodness for its own sake, but really just loving the personal benefits and comforts that you get from it. It's a love that's totally centered on the self. All right, so this brings us to what is maybe the most radical and pivotal idea in the whole text. After diagnosing this problem of our mercenary mindset, the author presents a solution, and it is probably not what you're expecting. Think about this. You could give away every penny you have. You could have all the knowledge in the world or be the most devout person you know. But the author says all of that, all of it, still falls short. You'd still be missing the one thing that is most necessary. So, what is it? What could possibly be more important than all that virtue, knowledge, or devotion? And here's the answer. The one necessary thing is complete self-denial. It's about giving up everything, but especially yourself. It means letting go of our own selfish desires, that little private stash of self-interest we all keep, and just completely giving ourselves up. And of course, this concept is rooted directly in this famous command. So it's not just about doing good things, it's about a fundamental shift, a reorientation away from the self. This is the bedrock of the Royal Road. Okay, now we have to turn to a pretty stark reality the text lays out. Even if we understand all this, our gut instinct is to try and escape hardship, right? But the author argues that trying to do that is utterly futile. It's pointless. The argument builds with this simple, powerful statement. The cross is unavoidable. There's just no getting around it. Suffering, in one form or another, is always there. It waits for you everywhere. It doesn't matter where you run. And here's the kicker. Here's why you can't escape. Because wherever you go, you take yourself with you. You can't outrun yourself. The source of so much of our struggle and our weariness is carried inside us. Escape is impossible because you can never leave you behind. So, if suffering is unavoidable, what on earth are we supposed to do? This final section reveals this incredible twist in the text's logic. It's all about transforming the very nature of the burden we carry. This is the absolute core of the whole solution. The thinking is, if you fight your cross, if you carry it with bitterness and resistance, you're actually carrying two burdens. You have the hardship itself, and then you have the exhausting weight of your own resistance on top of it. But, and this is the key, when you accept it willingly, The text says, the cross itself transforms. It stops being a burden that you carry and becomes the very vehicle that carries you to your destination. And the results of this shift in perspective are just profound. When you stop fighting reality, every trial can actually be a source of hope. Your spirit isn't worn down, it's strengthened. And in this crazy turn, the hardship can even become sweet, because it's not a meaningless burden anymore. It's the path to the one thing we're all really looking for: true inward peace. The ultimate payoff is this stunning paradox. By willingly embracing the very hardship you are trying to escape, you don't just find peace. The text says you can literally find paradise right here on earth. And so we end right back where we started, with a choice. The text leaves us with this final, challenging question. Knowing that a cross is unavoidable, and knowing that your attitude towards it changes absolutely everything, which path will you choose? When the choice is there to be made, will you take the narrow way,